So, part two. Uh, Welcome everyone to the Orlando Python meetup. We talked for plenty before I start the live stream, and I think we end up having 5 or 7 people consistently on the live stream. So hi there. Last time we went over VUI design, visual voice user interface, intents, entities, and fulfillment, and then adding in API endpoints to an existing API written in Flask to fulfill our Google skill. This time around, we're going to do the same with Alexa. We're going to see how we can take our Google Assistant skill, migrate it over to the Alexa Skills platform, Alexa Skills Kit, and add in Alexa endpoints so that we can use the same API and the same functions to fulfill 2 different skills. And then we're going to at least attempt to take what we've done so far on the fulfillment side and get it working on a serverless Lambda function, so that everything can live inside of, or at least for the Alexa side, everything can live inside of Amazon. And this is our last meeting at TOPS for Orlando Python. The machine learning and data science group is still going to be meeting here, but Orlando Python is going to be meeting elsewhere. Still figuring out exactly where that's going to be. But probably the next topic we're going to look at is asynchronous Python. So that's going to be a lot of fun. It's a little obtuse, or not obtuse, it's a little opaque at first, but it's a little easier to figure out once you get into the flow of things, once you figure out await and how to use that. If you're familiar with Node.js at all, with event-based fulfillment, it's going to be it's going to be a little easier to get into. But going into this, what we did last time is we have our Orlando Python meetup skill that we were working with. And just as a little refresher, we have, refresh the intents here, we had member count, echo back the name, and give us some details on the next meetup coming up for that meetup. And if we go into our integrations back over into Google Assistant, actually, now that I think of it, we need to restart our server here. So we go into our meetup application, quick refresher. We have some meetup utils. We're just pulling down some basic information from the meetup API via a Python client library. And in our application, we have 2 routes right here, and we implemented our member count. Make that a little bigger for you guys. We implemented our member count intent fulfillment here by giving our intent name, so it knew where to go to fulfill it. We would take the name of the meetup, which is a URL-friendly name. We would get the meetup and get the details and synthesize some speech and text-based response data. So Orlando Python has 300, probably up to 1,300 members now that I think of it, has 1,300 Pythonistas. And then in the card, showing how we can have different things for visual display and text-to-speech. So serving this, first thing we need to do here is ngrok, so we can open up HTTP. There we go. And start our server, I think it was just python app.py. Oh, and I need to go into my venv.
Yeah.
It was meetup. Yes. There we go. Don't worry about that. This actually, I don't think I mentioned it last time, but the Flask Assistant extension that we're using, this, there we go, our Google Assistant, Flask Assistant, there is a command line utility that gets installed when you pip install this particular library that will go through and analyze the existing Google Assistant endpoints in your Flask application and generate some documents locally that you can go in and fill with intents. You can fill out your entities and then programmatically push up to formerly known as API.ai, now known as Dialogflow. So you can actually use this Python application to programmatically fill out your intents engine, and other than going in and getting your developer keys, never ever interact with the web interface for building and filling out your skills. So let me just go ahead and grab our new endpoint here. So anyone in the world, as long as this is up, can go to a0eba1e7.ngrok.io and query this very bare bones API, Flask API. But it also means I need to go over here and replace this. Yep, HTTPS. Save that. And now we should be able to go into our integrations and go into, oh, that's not what I wanted. Test. Manage Assistant app actually takes you to the interface where you can submit it to the store and manage, get analytics on your application, manage potential version numbers and things like that. Come on. I think it takes a second. Last time. There we go. So I think, actually, let's just go back and look at it. So an example intent for our member count was, what is the member count, or how many people, how many members does Orlando Python have? And we have member count set up as an entry skill, so you don't have to have the application open immediately. So we can do something like ask Orlando meetups how many members Orlando Python has. And assuming everything is still connected, there we go. The Orlando Python user group has 1,361 Pythonistas. And that's being supplied. No. Accessible. Oh. This is going to be, well, I'm glad that we did this last month. They recently migrated from version 1 to version 2, hence the little warning at the top of the screen here. So accessibility text is required, and protocol, interesting. So some fixes need to be made to client libraries, but I'm glad we did it last month. It looks much better. I'm wondering, yeah, there we go. There's that. But it works. And here's our card. Here's the title of the group. Here's that information, just like we had back here. So there's our speech text and our card details. So that's what we did last time. What we're gonna focus this time is on taking our existing Google Assistant API with all of the intents and entities, porting it over to Alexa Skills Kit, adding our Alexa endpoints into this Flask application, and then how much, depending on how much time we have remaining, trying to get it onto a Lambda function. So, first things first, let's take a look at the Alexa Skills Kit interface. Developer.amazon.com/Alexa/console/ask. Just search Alexa Skills Kit. It'll probably be the first thing that pops up. You must have an Amazon account. I'm sure everyone does. If you haven't activated the developer side of it, it might be a couple more steps to get there. But you'll end up on this page, so you can have all of your different apps. We can go into Create Skill. So our skill here, I'm just going to name it the same that we had the other one. Orlando Python. Next. They have some, just like with Dialogflow, they have a couple of basic ones to get you started. So if you're doing flash briefing, like for a news agency, smart home if you're trying to do any kind of smart home integration, or video where you are trying to build a basic video player for your organization to be put on the Google Show-like devices. But we're going into custom, create skill. And here we are. So first things first, have a little checklist over here. Invocation name. We're going to call this, well, I think we gave it a slightly different name. Yeah, we called it Orlando Meetups for the invocation name over there. So we'll do the same over here, Orlando Meetups. Cannot contain, oh yes, that's right. So we do, we'll ask Alexa to open up the Orlando Meetups, and I realize now that every single time I say Alexa, someone's devices at home are going to go crazy when they're watching this, so that's going to be fun. Sorry, not sorry. Now, that's great. We can go in and we can build our intents, just like with Google Assistant over on Dialogflow. We have a couple of built-in ones, cancel intent, help intent, stop intent. And rather than going through and building out all of our intents, building out, I say all of our entities are one entity, and all of that, one of the nice things about starting with Dialogflow first, like I said last time, is we can come down here to integrations, and even though Google Assistant is very prominently featured in the integrations list, they do also have a lot of other things. I'll drag this back a little bit. Like Facebook Messenger, Slack, Viber, Twitter, Twilio, Skype, if you want to do that. But all the way down here, we have Alexa. And you'll notice that unlike all the other ones in here, they are not it is not a simple toggle, because Alexa does not allow Dialogflow to natively fulfill the intents, unlike these other platforms. What it does is we can export our application such that we can then populate everything that we've done already into the Alexa Skills Kit console. So we can do, and we can also import or restore if you're going the other way around. So export for Alexa, it'll download a folder of, I think in this case we have a folder in 2 files. Yep. So intent schema, sample utterances, and our custom slots. So we take a look at our intent schema here. It was very basic, but because we only had 2 intents, that 2 custom intents, we had our next count and our member count, as long with the names that Alexa is going to be using internally. Meetups, is a meetup slot type meetup for our slot names. If we look at our sample utterances, let's make that bigger. these are the utterances that we used to build out each of our intents. So how many people are going to the next meeting, and it looks really weird, but this is either there's something wrong with it, or this is how Alexa is going, the Alexa console is trying to read it in. But you'll notice that these here are for our next count, and here's our member count, like when we were reading it before, member count. How many members does our meetup have? And you notice meetup slots is associated with our meetup entity. Then, lastly, we have our custom types, and it looks like an executable. It's not. But this is our custom meetup type entity. And before we continue a little more, because now we're switching over from the dialog flow side of things into Alexa, they both call things intents, the function names, effectively. But whereas Dialogflow and Google Assistant call the parameters of these functions entities, Alexa calls them slots. So just know that if we're talking about a slot, we're talking about an entity, we're talking about an intent parameter, something that the user would say. So, with all of that, here is our JSON editor. And drag and drop JSON file. No, drag and drop, but there's our intents. I can just take all of our intents here. Well, actually I shouldn't include the intents, because that would wipe out the 3 that are already there. So let me just go in here, paste them in, and I certainly hope that when I click Save Model and reload that, nope, intent name must not be empty. That's interesting. Alright. Oh, I included a language model? I must have put it in the wrong spots. Let's see what happened there. So.
Because the old layout gave you like 3 spots to
Yeah.
now it's all in one.
I'm hoping that if I make this look nice and pretty, something might pop out at me as being glaringly wrong, but actually, what if I just try adding 1 and come on. So drag and drop a single intent. Oh, the wonderful thing about porting things over. Well. Well, in the interest of time, I was hoping that was going to work. Yeah, might as well just build it again. Well, we only implemented member count in our backend.
I think slots is the one that is causing problem.
Well, slots, well,
Because
it very likely true. Although, for now, if we get rid of slots,
yeah, we got the slots.
Yeah, they might call it something different internally now. No, still failed. Intent nameless. Oh. Haha.
Name member count should be instead of intent.
Okay. Yeah, that is exactly it. So if we call that name,
Yeah.
save model, it's model 66, and it updated our format. So that was member count. I'm just going to pull in next count now. Rename intent to name. API inconsistencies. What can you do? Name. Custom type values must not be empty. That's a different one. I am wondering if that means that, well, slot type. Well, let's go back. So there's our meetup. So just quickly going back, there is documentation on how to do this properly. The fact that we just saw that there is some inconsistency in both sides updating their import-export tool. They're not always going to be up to date. We have some people downstairs, by the way. All right. So yes, and you you can also see that their screenshots for their documentation are the old interface. The last couple months, the Alexa side has revamped their interface. So, what can you do? In the meantime, just like we did with that, let's go ahead and fill up our slot types. So here we have meetup. Now, intent meetup count. Here's our meetup slot. No, we just want our slot types here. So meetup, we have a value. I'm hoping, at the very least, that it will be nice about enters. Nope. So we have Lambda Python here. We have our Orlando backend developers meetup. Now notice that these are not the actual things that people say, because they're, we have one word and we have the other one with hyphens. These are the URL friendly values that we use to make our API call. And you'll notice that we have these synonyms over here. That is going to be the equivalent of our dictionary key value association. So when someone says Orlando Python and the text-to-speech program puts in Orlando space Python, it's going to know that, oh, this is the value that I want to get out of it. So some of our synonyms for this guy are Orlando Python there, Orlando Python user group, and Orlando's Python meetup. And so now when anyone says any of those, the actual value that's going to be returned to us is Orlando Python, like we would expect. And then the other one, we have Orlando Backend Developers Meetup. These, or backend, Orlando Backend, or Backend Devs. There we go. Save model. Already saved it. Okay. Now we go in and fill in our sample utterances. Huh. So rather than dealing with, well, never. I'm very curious how main people, I'm wondering, because we didn't, if I go back to the thing, I'm wondering if this, or well, I guess specifically this is something that was included automatically by Dialogflow to be a hidden catch-all for this intent. It's like we know that you mean how many people, but our speech-to-text might sometimes hear how main people. So we're going to add that in there as a hidden a hidden thing that we're looking for to try to increase the accuracy for you. So we'll see. And you'll notice that it was nice enough to add the Alexa-style syntax for specifying our slots. So on Meetup, you'll do either @ or $, I'm just forgetting offhand, and then you put your entity name there. For Alexa, it has the curly braces. And syntax highlighting, just like we had over on the Google, the Dialogflow side. So, what's the member count? How many people? How many people in open up Meetup slot? Boom. And our 10 slots, we have Meetup slot. Slot type is of type Meetup, and I covered this over on the Dialogflow side. I'll show this one off. Both Dialogflow, Google Assistant, and the Alexa Skills Kit all have tons of built-in types. Actors, can recognize actors, airports, book series, European cities, landforms, string literals, numbers, rooms, so on, so on, so on. So you don't have to create an exhaustive list of entity values for those, but if it is something custom, like you're in an enterprise, or the names of pharmaceutical drugs, you're kind of out of luck. You have to do it yourself. I do have a little clip with Alexa's built-in types, but we'll get to that soon enough. But at least for this one type, we can save our model. We can build our model. Build has started. In the meantime, we can go down to our interface here. So we have a couple of different things, just like over in the Dialogflow, that we can toggle. For example, we can explicitly enable and disable display interface. So you can say that the Echo Show should not do anything special for this application because I don't have anything implemented. It's not designed to show any video, and my skill is not going to be fetching some third-party MP3s to play, like a podcast loader, things like that. Oh, and they actually have beta Alexa gadget, so if you've seen the big, easy buttons, you can do the Jeopardy-style games within the trivia game, so you can add in gadget support for your applications as well. But more to what we're going to do right now. our endpoint. You noticed it is highly recommended to use a Lambda function. Obviously, it's Amazon. However, we for now have our own server. So for our default region, we have back here our same ngrok endpoint. That's great. But we also don't have any endpoints for them yet to hit, or we haven't specified any functions in our API specifically for Alexa, and more specifically for our member count intent. So I'm going to go ahead and save this endpoint here, if it will let me. No, because it wants this. So quick note, because we are a subdomain of ngrok.io, there are two SSL cert types, or there are three types that you can do, and it must be HTTPS. It does not allow HTTP. Normally, you do, my endpoint has a dedicated cert. In our case, however, we are a subdomain of one with a dedicated cert, so we're going to do that one. Now it should allow me to save it. There we go. And our build was successful, just to wrap that up. Now, we can get into, so I moved pretty quickly, or as quickly as I could. Is anyone lost on the Alexa Skills Kit VUI Intense Engine side yet? Or doing good? We're all good? Okay. Now, we can get into the Python side of this. So, just like we had before with our Flask Assistant Flask extension for making the Google Assistant dialog flow side really easy to use, the same exists for the Alexa Skills Kit. It is called Flask Ask. So let's go into this down here. I'm going to stop this. I'm already in the VM, so we're going to do pip install, and just in case I already have it installed, Flask Ask. And while that's doing that, let's look at the documentation. There we go. Actually, I think that's the one I want, if it'll let me do it. Let's go back. Should be the same, more or less the same thing, but bigger. There we go. Alright, Flask Ask. Just going to getting started, because that will get you about 90% of the way with most Python libraries. So, just like we had before with Flask Assistant, we have Flask Ask, we have an ask, we initialize our ask and give it the app and say what endpoint we want it to be at, because Dialogflow and Alexa are all posts to a single endpoint, and these Flask extensions do the hard lifting of when a post gets made to this endpoint, let me reroute it to the function based on the intent in the post payload. Flask intent, we give the intent name, just like we had before. In this case, they're actually using render template, which is a Flask. It's using a library called Jinja2, which is all about static template rendering. You'll find it a lot. It comes pre-installed with Flask. It's used a lot with Flask. I've seen it with Bottle and Pyramid. Maybe not that last one, probably. And I think it's also included in Django, but someone can correct me on that. So they're using a text file template to render their text, but it's the same sort of thing. We build up a statement. Here's what to say, and there's simple card, just like we had on the Google side, for displaying information either in app or on the whenever a visual is available. So let's do that over here, and just put it. Actually, if you're going in alphabetical order, from Flask ask, import ask and statement. So you see the similarities between these two. They just call things slightly differently. And we'll do the same thing here. We will initialize ask to be our ask. We give it the app, just like any other Flask extension. And the route for this one is going to be our Alexa endpoint. Let's go ahead and save that. Now down below here, right underneath our assistant function, we'll do ask.intent. We give it the intent name, which has been changed to member count because I think Alexa doesn't allow hyphens, or I'm not sure if they disallow hyphens in the name, but this is more of the way that they decide to do it. It's in their documentation, so the community decides this is how we name things. That's how it goes. And so we'll do Alexa member count. Now, there is one thing that I'm purposefully not including just yet because I want to just show something. In the meantime, rather than going through the actual building of it, we're just going to return something static. So that we know that we are connected up the way that we should. Save that. Restart the app. And hope I got this all right. Okay. So, close these. There we go. So back at our endpoint, we made it our Alexa endpoint, so we just add that to the end. So it's going to make post requests to our ngrok endpoint /Alexa. Now, on the top, actually for good measure, we can go back into our intents and build our model again. Probably not necessary with the changes that we made or didn't make, but just to be sure. Alright, build successful. So we can go over here into our test tab. Yes, we're okay with leaving the page. And this will provide us a very similar test environment to what we saw over with the Google Assistant when everything loads up. I will say that with my time test going between the two of them on trying to deploy the same app on different platforms, the debugging is better on the Alexa side than it is on the side, because they, rather than trying to shove everything into a single error response, trying to explain everything, Alexa is a little better where it has a more granular breakdown on all the different calls that were made internally, so you can figure out what went wrong. So we will enable our test, and rather than showing the display, we'll pull up the device log is down here. So let's see, open Orlando meetups. There we go. So you can already see that there was an error in there somewhere. Alright. Ooh, that's interesting. So on the one hand, module lid has, that's interesting. Flask app, ask core. That is very interesting. Now, my guess as to, well, an error occurred while issuing a speech request before. My guess is that that's not what I meant to do. That took us all the way back to our skills list. Back in our build over here, you'll notice that in the built-in types that we were pre-populated with in the app is we don't have a welcome intent. And if you just open up an application, it goes to the welcome intent. So that's what I guess just happened there, although by the errors, because it was cert errors and weirdness, so I'm not quite, you wouldn't really be able to tell that that was the case. However, I'm wondering if instead of saying just open, if we explicitly ask, and it might be something we have to go in and explicitly allow, just like on the dialog flow side, just ask what our member count is. So ask Orlando meetups how many members Orlando Python has. On the other side, I'm not, so yay live debugging. I'm not sure why the crypto library is coming up. However, I did explicitly leave something out, and I was hoping that it was going to be okay. I'm not sure if this is it. So, we didn't have to do this up here. However, in the Flask ask, normally this meetup thing down here would be, this is the meetup. And under normal circumstances, again, I'm not sure why that crypto error is coming up. But instead of saying, hey, the meetup is a string, here's the string that you asked for, or it would give you embedded Amazon dictionary overhead that you typically get with a lot of Amazon services. Again, Amazon really likes dictionaries. However, it's not slots. Let's go into the documentation for this. Handling requests. What we are looking for in here is casting. Here we go, mapping. So when the post request comes through to our Flask endpoint, we can explicitly cast it from one type to another, according to the name of the slot that we gave it. So in this case, there's city, but it was meetup, and we're going to cast it to the string type. And the reason why I'm thinking that this is weird, or it could be the reason, is, well, we have this valid cert, which is a little odd, or, no, cores wouldn't do anything. Something was going down with this subject alt name string, so I'm not sure if that's the case, but let's see if that does anything. Well, let's do some live debugging then. I'm forgetting the name of it, but there is a wonderful command line utility where, no, not a command line utility, it's a Python extension where whenever it detects that there has been an uncaught error, it automatically searches over Stack Overflow for that text and sends you to the web page. It's not installed on here, but it's wonderful. Don't remember the name, but it exists. So let's just see what's going on with this. There's a problem using Flask, Ask, and ngrok. Although last time I tested this, this wasn't the case, so I'm wondering if it's just a version thing or not. Nope, we just need to install a library. Thank you, Stack Overflow. Do, 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 do. 90% of coding is just saying, I have this problem, let me look on Google. Oh, there it is. So let's reload that. Oh, and actually, I forgot to add in the print statement here so that we can see that it got called and see what the output is. And assuming this works, I'll delete that mapping so we can see what it looks like natively. So let's ask this again. The nice thing here is we didn't explicitly have to say, hey, our member count intent is available to be called from outside of our app's context, so we don't have to open the app. That's something you do have to do on Dialogflow. But the fact that it was getting errors on our side there means that the connection is happening. Hi from Python Flask. Yay! It was just a crypto library. But, okay, so we're not getting anything from that. I was not expecting that one. So my guess as to that, if we go back into build, I think it capitalized our slot name, and the capitalization is important. Yep. So instead of lowercase meetup, if we make this all caps meetup, and restart our server here. Let's ask again. How many members does Orlando Python have? We should still see hi from Orlando Python. Yeah, hi from Python Flask, and still none. Okay. Back into our documentation when parameter and slot names differ. Oh, I was thinking convert, wasn't I? So I wonder. Yeah, it's not. So I think it is actually looking. So if we keep mapping, and we map our all caps meetup to here at meetup. My guess is for the mapping is in Python if you I'm just going to do this to the side. In Python, if you have a dictionary, you can have meetup, and I'm just going to say that this is true. If you want to feed that as keyword arguments into a function call like this, you just do that to the front of it, and it packs everything by name. That's what I guess is that's my guess as to what's going on behind the scenes with that. But we're going to convert, and I'm wondering, is our lowercase or uppercase? We'll find out here soon enough. We'll convert it to a string type. And run that query again. It's still in there. Yep. Nope, still none. So let's try making this all caps. Again. Still none. Well. The casing shouldn't matter. So the fact that we're getting meetup here, well, actually, the mapping might be inverse. So I'm wondering if we need to reverse our meetup and meetup this way. And then we can try the lowercase version over here again. The nuclear option here is just going into the slot name and just renaming it lowercase meetup and saying, I'm just going to use lowercase. Okay, so one more time, and then we'll just go in and change the slot name. Just change the slot name. But it is calling it. Not sure I can actually change the slot name after it's already been made, so we'll just delete it and repopulate it. Easy enough. So we're going back to our slot values over here. And just to keep things short, there's our Lambda Python. I'm just going to put the Python ones in here, because we'll try to get to the Lambda fulfillment rather than making all of this perfect. Oh, I totally just put the backend developers in there, didn't I? Save that. No slots to fill. I think you need to actually have it up here first. Oh, slot type. That's exactly what it was. Alright. Oh, yeah, okay. So the slot type there wasn't the thing that was erroring out. Okay, so let's go ahead and build that. And back over in our app file, just going to get rid of the mapping. Let it build. Boot. Okay. Hopefully, less going on, less lost in translation.